was your drug or drugs of choice if you had multiple?
More.
More. Absolutely.
Actually, more. Actually, I would probably just take pretty much anything that was there, but my drug of choice for sure was alcohol, cocaine, and actually sex for sure. You know, sex,
Ooh.
rock and roll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. No, that's fine. I never stuck in any one addiction long enough. I'm a switch hitter, so I could get high off of eating, I could get high off of gambling, I could get high off of sex, I could get high off of drugs, alcohol. Anytime I kind of fell, really into a dark pit in any one of those, I just stopped doing it in a sense, and I'd switch to something else.
Wow.
And so I was never not medicated with consuming something in my life.
Wow. Very powerful. I definitely struggled with, especially with sex and recovery. I was always craving attention and needing just everything from somebody that meant absolutely nothing to me, and I finally found myself to a point of where I was worth more than that. So that was definitely hard to get over. So what age did you start using any substance?
The first time I ever used any substance was at 12 years old. I drank. I think everybody kind of has this type. A lot of us have this story that I was babysitting. I collected alcohol in a pickle jar. Although the pickles weren't in it, washed it out really good. But I collected it over the course of, several weeks because I had a big dance going, and then I took it to school because my locker was where the gym would have been cut off, so we could have still had access to it. Well, I guess somebody must have I thought, tipped off the school principal, and he had a locker raid or whatever they call them in school. They check everybody's locker, and I panicked, and they're going to do it after lunch. And the stupid thing is, the school would always tell you, hey, we're going to do a locker raid after lunch. Well, shit, as if the stuff's going to be there after lunch. I went and drank it at lunch with a couple of friends, and I definitely blacked out. I don't remember too much other than the police, the fire trucks, ambulances were called because I attacked my substitute science teacher, who was a little Asian lady about maybe 4 feet tall. And I also attacked the principal. This is what I've been told in the reports. It was not pretty. I was kicked out of every school in BC. They wouldn't let me come back. I should have known then that I had a problem with alcohol.
Right? If only we could look back. That's what I remember, looking back and seeing my whole life kind of fall into place and everything making sense. Only when I got into recovery. And I was like, why wouldn't I realize that? Why did I think that was normal? So
that was the thing to do. That was the thing to do. Is you go out and get wasted and party, and right up to the time I got sober, no question, that's what we did. I was proud. I wore the badge of honor of the crazy shit I did drinking. I thought that's what everybody did. What crazy stuff can you do? You talk about it all week until you do it again on Friday. Right. I mean, that was life. That was my life. Yep.
Yeah. So how long did you use for?
I only used I used at 12, obviously the first time I picked up, but I didn't pick up again alcohol until I was 15. And it wasn't even by choice. I actually was slipped. I had one drink with a boy who was much older than me, and I actually woke up not being a virgin. I was date raped. And so that was pretty horrific, and I didn't use again or drink until about a year later. And then that was when I went running at about 16, 17, I started drinking. And my last drink was when I was 23. So I don't know how many. I'm not good at math. I skipped out at math class. Sorry, folks. So yeah.
And a lot of people, especially when you start so young, there's those gaps, those years in between almost, right? And then it's people's addictions are always different but the same, right? Like the people that binge for like a weekend or a month and never touch it for 6 months, you know, and then they're like, why is my life so unmanageable during that month or that week? And it's like, you know,
Right?
it's like, I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah.
So who did your addiction affect?
Definitely my addiction affected my mom, um, myself. I mean, now being in recovery, I could see how it affected myself. My little son, I was a single mom when I got sober, and I definitely affected him. You know, my behavior, not so much when I was drinking, I was actually pretty responsible. I would always have good babysitters. I mean, I was a good alcoholic, and, you know, I could be a proud mother because, you know, my son wasn't around my drinking and my using. However, he was around on my hangovers. He was around when I didn't want to play with him. He was around when I would shoo him and lock him in his room and, you know, kind of not want to be present. He was annoying because I was just so sick. Like, my hangovers were terrible. So that part, you know, really affected him. And obviously affected me because the guilt and the shame, and my work was affected. People around me, I wasn't reliable. I was always calling in or late or making errors in my business. I was a meat wrapper at Safeway, actually, and I would constantly, like, the customers loved me because I would always put the wrong prices on shit because I didn't remember the codes. I would be so hungover. But my boss didn't really like me giving away filet mignon at ground beef prices.
That could be a problem.
So I definitely caused, you know, sorry Safeway, but whatever.
Yeah, we affect everybody in our path. You know, even if, whenever, we may not realize it then, but in the long run, we definitely realize it. And definitely, I think it's important how much we impact ourselves. Like, how much that affects us, you know. When I got sober, I was like, wait, who made this mess? Me? Oh, no. I can't face that. What am I going to do? You know, and like, I literally had this conversation with myself, and I was like, well, I could either go make more mess, or I could take what I have now and just face it head on. So that's pretty much what I did, which seems to be a really good idea, because could you imagine how much more I would have made, you know? So what led you to get clean?
I didn't lead myself to get clean. I absolutely loved drinking. I was a party girl, but part of my story is because I partied so much, I hung around, had a lot of friends that partied too, and I hung around with guys. I didn't really like the bitches. I kind of was like the wing girl for my guy friends. Like, they would always be like, oh, go get her and go check her out, and, you know, so that was kind of the role. But my guy friends drank so bad that they started actually, I used to look at them and go, like, what is wrong with you? Why? I didn't understand the disease of alcoholism, that's progressive. And they progressed so much that they would have bruises from, you know, their livers were just so screwed. So they started going to support meetings, a 12-step group, and then they started getting, like, chips, you know, like, I don't know, those little medallions and things. So they'd invite me all the time to these meetings for support. So I would go. I loved it because they were all old people, and I would walk in with my, you know, pull in with my fancy car and my short skirt and my stilettos, and, you know, I have arrived, and yeah, to a meeting, thinking I was, you know, the cat's meow. And but one time they did say, and I didn't really listen to the meetings. I was there kind of like giggling and pointing and judging and criticizing, and, you know, but one time I went, and my friends were twins, actually, identical twins. And this time I walked in, and they were sitting with a seat between them that was empty. And they patted the seat, and they say, hey, we've saved you a seat. And they patted it like I needed to be there. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I would not sit in that chair. But that day, I started looking around, like, do people, like, what's going on? And I started looking around the room, and I was so filled with I'm the shit. I realized nobody else thought I was the shit.
Yeah.
And I felt vulnerable. I felt naked. I felt like so small, and I sat in another chair and I started looking around, and I remember feeling my neck getting all red, and then I started listening to some of the messages. So that's actually when I started maybe questioning, maybe what is an alcoholic? Like, what is it that's going on here? Like, what are you guys talking about? And I started listening. And it took about a year after that until I actually found the courage enough to ask somebody that I knew. Actually, it was my husband at the time that I met at a sober dance.
Awesome.
And I just wanted to fuck him. He was hot. What can I say? I was drunk. I mean, you know, he was sober. I didn't realize all the stuff. And once I did, I'm like, this is the guy I'm going to ask. How do you know you're an alcoholic? Yeah. Anyways, that's a true story. So I ended up, from that day, after I asked him if I was an alcoholic, or no, not if I was an alcoholic, I ended up having one more drink 4 days later. And that was my last drink, December 18th, 1991.
Awesome.
And the last time I drank was hell. And I entered into recovery, and I thought, there's no question, 1,000,000%. I was convinced, I knew with every ounce of my being that I had a problem with alcohol and drugs. And I felt that on that Tuesday night, I felt that on the Wednesday night, on that Thursday night, and that Friday morning. I didn't think it was so bad.
Yeah.
And it disappeared.
Absolutely.
But I did stay.
I love your vulnerability. I love your honesty. It's amazing. Our stories are very similar. I love that you speak about that, you know. Awesome. So how do you stay clean today? What are you doing to stay clean today?
Today, actually, I got asked that on a TikTok, actually. Someone said, what's your biggest tool? The biggest tool that I use today to stay sober, for sure, is my support meetings. And in support meetings, actually, sometimes I've gone through the Bible study stuff too, later in my recovery, because I was definitely not a God believer in the beginning. But I do a lot of meetings, and the reason why I do meetings is because, there goes my ting. The reason why I do support meetings as my number one tool is because it's the one place I can go and I pray, because they usually have a prayer. The other thing I do is when other people share is when I actually hear my higher power speaking to me, who I choose to call God. Those messages, I think, that are directly for me. That's how I have an open conversation with God, by hearing other people share. And the other thing that happens is I can serve. And how I serve sometimes is just showing up and filling a screen. I never pass when I get asked to share. Even if I say I'm having a shitty day, I don't have anything really good to say, that's it. I'm serving. So those are why I have to pick that as my number one tool.
Love it. So what's your biggest accomplishment within your recovery?
Biggest, my sobriety, like almost 30 decades not drinking and drugging, for freaking sure. I've never been able to accomplish, I always feel like I've failed so much in every area of my life, and it's just something that I've not failed at to this day, as far as staying sober. And the other thing that I'm so proud of is my marriage. Same thing, like that guy that I met all the wrong ways, got into a relationship for all the wrong reasons, really. We went through toxicity, we went through lots of stuff that wasn't great in a relationship, but we worked, I worked up my relationship just like I did how I got sober, and I haven't given up on it. And yeah, that is for sure. Like, I'm madly in love with my husband today, more than I ever was, ever. Yeah.
I love that you speak about it, because we can use those same tools in every part of our life, whether that be relationships, jobs, career, like all of that. We have the ability to make it different and to make it more, you know, because that's what the steps bring us. They bring us that different way of life, right? So,
Definitely.
knowing what you know now, would you change anything?
No. You know, I can't even believe that I would say no, because so often in my recovery I had regrets. You know, like there was one of these things that they tell you in recovery that you'll have no regrets. And I used to have a hard time thinking, well, I've done some stuff. Some things have happened to me that I would want to change. Things that happened in my childhood, things that I experienced as a woman, you know. But every single one of those things that I have experienced have happened for a higher purpose. I don't believe my God allowed those things to happen. That's one thing that I work through in my recovery program, because so often I'm like, what kind of a God would allow blah, 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 blah? Like, if he loved me, blah, blah, blah. I used to get so with this religious God that, you know, punishes and all that shit. I know today that my God doesn't work that way.
Yes.
And, you know, unfortunately, there's just as much not so good in the world, evil, and it works just as powerful. So sometimes, you know, when those things happen, the greatest thing I have is that God has taken those bad experiences and he's turned it into good.
Awesome. So if you could say something to somebody that's still out there actively using, what would you say to them?
I'd love them. You know, like, I try not to say and tell them what to do unless they're wanting and coming and asking. I just love them. You know, the one thing I don't do is when I do see somebody, say, panhandling, and, you know, we can call it mental health, or most often it's addiction, I actually don't give money. I find other ways to give back, and most often it's people who are helping themselves in recovery and are making a difference, or, you know, even those, we did a whole thing through Seek Purpose last Christmas, actually, for moms in recovery that are working moms. Yeah. Like, they're working, they're getting up, they're staying sober, they're taking care of their kids, and they have no husbands or boyfriends to help them. And I was like, we need to help these moms. Like, that's where I want to give back, is to those, yeah.
That's incredible. I love that. Give back whichever way you choose.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So if you could say something to a family member of a loved one that's in active addiction, what would you say to the family member?
I get this a lot over the years, because, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, my family, I had no relationship with my family when I first came in. Very, very little. It was very superficial. It was, you show up at birthdays and Christmases and put a happy face on. But over the years of my recovery and working my program and being honest with them about my feelings, about our upbringing, our relationships have bonded so incredibly. They've shown up at my cakes, celebrated with me, have heard a lot of living sober and recovery program, and they don't even know it. And then I would get calls from them. Hey, you know, my daughter's in cheer, and, you know, this woman keeps picking her up. I think there's booze on her breath. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, what would you say? And those types of conversations, and when people reach out from family, especially asking me, is special, because each situation is different. I don't have a blanket to say, oh, tell them this or tell them that. I really, again, try to find out if a family member is asking me for some supports, if that family member is willing. Are they asking for my information? Are they wanting to talk to me? Or is it just you calling me, wanting me to call them?
Yeah.
Because from my experience, sadly, I have, you know, reached out to people, and because the family has asked me to do it, and it has been it's been a closed door, sadly. So I have to make sure that individual who's suffering or in addiction is really wanting me there, in a sense. So, and my son's in addiction. I mean, what do you do? Like, he knew that he was an alcoholic addict the first day he drank. I asked him, do you want to go to a meeting? No, fuck no. So every time he drank, we tried to make his bottom happen fast, like call the police, get him in the drunk tank.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. I don't think there's a perfect answer for that. I think every individual, depending on the situation,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely individualized. I always say that, like, recovery, it's not all the same. Like, what works for me probably isn't going to work for you, and vice versa, right? Like, we're all individual people. We all have completely different backgrounds and where we grew up. And it's great because we all have the same foundation. You know, like, there is something, even if you don't work a 12-step program, if you're into a different kind of program of recovery, it's still the same thing. You know, there's still that foundation of staying sober, no matter which way you choose to do it. So,
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, does a person want to be sober, or do they want to have sobriety?
right.
I mean, there's a big difference. There's
Yeah.
a lot of people out there doing sober. That's great. And white knuckling 50 8
Yeah.
days or 100, 365 days, I'm doing it. But then there's sobriety of a euphoric way to live sober. And I have personally found that through a program, a 12-step program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to down what everybody else does.
Yep.
Sadly, I've been around long enough to see a lot of other ways of just being sober doesn't have long-term, success, sadly. But I will love anybody that's taken a breath without drinking and drugging today, man.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and just open the floor so you can go ahead and share anything that you feel is necessary to share.
Oh, wow, that's a wide open thing, isn't it? Yeah, I think the big part of my story, which a lot of people think that they've got to, like what an alcoholic looks like, or somebody that's really seriously in the trenches of addiction, and they're seizuring, they're, getting Narcan, I'm just like jails, institutions, losing everything, bankrupt, families have left. For me, that is not my story. Mm-hmm. I sobered up at 23. I still had a job. I still had my child, maybe by a thread, but I still had him. And actually, the reason why I had my child, my addiction was getting to the point that I wanted drinking and the party life more than I wanted to be a mother. And I actually was so manipulative that I put myself into counseling because I figured I could manipulate the counselor to believe that I wasn't well enough to be a mother. So he would take my kid away, and then I would blame him when my family was like, "What do you mean you lost Joel?" Lost my son. And that's how sick I was back then. Mm-hmm. Like, I was so calculated and so selfish. Everything was me, 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 me. But I mean, I was in my 20s. I mean, that's usually what I thought you all do when you're 20. But that didn't happen. God had a different plan for me. But yeah, I accidentally landed in a support meeting. And as I said earlier, and I still had pretty much my life kind of intact, although I didn't know how to pay my rent. I was desperate to pay my bills. I was always hustling. How I didn't end up, becoming a prostitute is beyond me. I guess I did prostitute myself in other ways, in a sense. Like, I would manipulate men. I found that addiction was euphoric too. Like, I lost so much power as a child in my childhood, and being controlled and going through such narcissistic abuse from my dad's girlfriend. For years, it was just like insanity that I never was able to, I was never able to really be who I was meant to be. It was taken away. And so when I got older, and of course losing my virginity, again, as I said earlier, at 15, I just found I was threatened by men. I was scared of men. And, but something happened when I drank, and when I was able to use my abilities as a woman to manipulate them. I got addicted to that. I used to play games with myself and my girlfriend. Actually, my girlfriend and I are both the same, and we'd be like, okay, how many tonight? And we'd have competitions, like how long it would take us to get a guy doing this, that, and the other thing. And I got it was insane. Like I could almost do that sober, just because of the rush that I would get. And I used to laugh inside, like, these guys are such fucking idiots. And sorry guys, but it's the truth, And I remember the ones that I used to go at the most were men or guys who would cheat on their girlfriends. I just despised them, because my dad was like that. My dad left my mom and destroyed my life, and married some woman 10 years younger that destroyed my life, right? So all of what I was doing was really an inner anger and a resentment that I was trying to hurt my dad. And in the end, it ended up hurting myself. And I hurt a lot of people around. In fact, when I got into recovery, that part of the sex part was such a sickness within me that I had to do a whole step series just on that. Like literally, like I had to write down everybody. I couldn't even remember. It was like, oh, Hawaii number 1, Hawaii number 2. Like when I went to Hawaii, it was terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm not proud of that today for how I handled it. But the one thing I do understand is the root of why I did that. And I was I was just a little girl that really needed to feel secure and loved. And, and I kept on looking on the outside for all that. I looked at that through people, through relationships, through booze, through drugs, through everything. And I didn't learn until I came into recovery that how I get filled is not from the outside world. It's actually from my higher power, that I choose to call God today. And as soon as I divorced all of my thinking in regards to those things that I would consume myself with, and kind of surrendered those, and then allowed God to fill me up, my life just continued, even in sobriety, to end in brokenness and darkness. And like my marriage, like I said earlier, was the biggest thing that I'm proud of in my recovery. Even though we met with those old behaviors, God knew that I needed that area in my life to be kind of taken care of, so to speak. And I don't recommend getting into a relationship early in recovery. I swear it really is not. I don't know very many people that can survive staying sober long term, getting in such a relationship in such an early stage. I did, but I ended up learning through that in the end, until I actually surrendered and realized that my partner wasn't going to be the one that was going to make Suzanne feel better. It wasn't until then, and I was years into my marriage, when I finally truly divorced my husband spiritually and married my higher power, so to speak, was when things started changing. I tell people today, when they're having problems in their marriage, I said, well, you need a menage a trois. And they're like, what? What the fuck are you talking about? A what? You need a menage a trois. And they're like, I can't believe. And they're like looking at me. And I said, okay, just calm down. Just calm the fuck down. I said, what you need is God. You need something in the middle. You need God in the middle of you need to bring him in.
Yeah.
You really need to bring him in, or whatever you call your higher power, because there's no hope. I'm telling you right now. I mean, I've tried everything, counseling, freaking program, all the blah, 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 blah. What God has done in my marriage and how he has healed, like, that's why I have no nails. I've letting go is difficult for me. So, I like to share that part of my story because, to sit and tell you my drunkalogs and, I qualify. I am definitely a qualified alcoholic. But what people struggle with once you get into recovery is all the other shit.
Yeah.
Now the drinking and the drugging's not an issue. Now you're faced with feelings, you're faced with relationships, you're faced with how am I going to live this sober life? Like, it's freaking scary. And we continue to pick up things and old things I did anyways, how to communicate and what to do. And I failed miserably, like both my husband and I did. But the one thing that I have never stopped doing through my entire recovery is I've never left the middle of my recovery program. I am constantly, I've never stopped going to my support meetings. I remember the times when I was starting to call and make excuses after like a year or two. I was like, oh, I'm too busy, the kids are this, the kids are that. Like, my life is fucking great. I'm realizing now where my issues come from. Like, yeah, I know I got daddy issues, I got mommy issues, and, but my life is great. And, I'm getting to that point that recovery was becoming kind of an annoyance, that I had to go to these stupid meetings still and call my sponsors, and like that just started really getting in the way of my life. But I'm grateful I was around. I built a strong enough program in foundation in the beginning that I had great support women around me that wouldn't allow me to go there. That when they started hearing the excuses and I couldn't come, I remember one time this woman said, oh, you can't come. And I said, no. She says, what time do the kids go to bed? And I said, okay. So I told her I had to get the kids to bed now. Right? I couldn't go out. Like, the kids got to get to bed. And she said, what time do the kids get to bed? I go, I'm thinking, okay, the meeting's at 7, so I'm going to say 7:30. 7:30? So she's like, great, I'm coming over with a pot of coffee at 8. And I'm like, what? So this bitch shows up at my house at 8 o'clock. And I'm just like, what the hell? And she did. She came over with a freaking pot of coffee. And I'm like, what the hell? And then, you know what she did? She taught me how I can have a support meeting in my damn home.
Yep.
And for almost, what am I coming up, 30 years, I have had a women's meeting in my home. And having a meeting in my home has done so much, not only for my own sobriety and other people's. It's made me accountable.
Wow.
It has shown my family, my children, my special needs daughter, oh my God, like, you don't want to see her in the mall if you're friends with her on Facebook, because she'll be like, hi, she'll be like, that's my mom's egg, I can't even say it without breaking my anonymity, but she'll break her anonymity.
Yeah.
But, so proud of being a daughter of a recovering alcoholic. Parents, recovery just bleeds throughout our house, our home. My family knows Thursday night's women's night. They know my home group is on Sunday night. I will have family gatherings at my house, Christmas or not, anytime, on Sundays. And I will leave my ass family in my living room and say, bye, I'm going to my meeting. And they let themselves out, because that's just what I have to do. I am a better mother. I'm a better friend. I'm a better daughter. I'm nothing if I pick up. I will be dead. I will be hurting my family again, and my community, and every relationship that I connect with, if I don't put my recovery number 1. And so those times, if you're out there and you're struggling, because you will, like, I don't care how joyous and happy and free you are right now, it's going to happen. And you're going to sit there and you're going to be like, all of those people in recovery are fucking lying. What are you talking about? This is horrible. Like, what, like, that's what I went through. I go through. Like, you're just sitting there going, why am I feeling like this? Why is this coming up? What is going on? Oh my God. But we can get through that without drinking. We can get through that without drinking. I've certainly done that many times. And the miracles that come right after that crazy ass experience is the most, that's when your pink cloud comes and your miraculous joy. And I always let women know this, who have given birth with nothing, with no drugs, no medication. the labor pains. I have sober labor pains to this day. They just don't go away. Because my sober miracles are birthed. And I remember years ago that I heard a woman share about how her sobriety is like giving, like labor. That's all she said, and I never forgot it because it's true. All through my recovery has been sober labor pains. And it comes with the most incredible, freaking incredible, miraculous joys after I experience those moments. And I'm addicted. My addiction's never going to go away. My addiction today is experiencing that miracle, which helps me get through those labor pains. Because when you're given birth, ladies, I'll never forget the first time. This is against the law. How can there be a God who would make a woman go through this shit? Right? Like, who? Like, if I never believed in God then, I certainly was never going to believe in him again. Like, what are you talking? Like, why would a human being have to go through this much agony and pain?
Yeah.
When I held my son for the first time in my arms, like, that breath, that joy, made all of that pain, made all of it worth it. So I always tell people I work with, and I remind myself when I'm going through those moments and those discomforts and the irritation, and like, I'm still not drinking, I'm still not drugging, I'm still going to my regular support meetings, I'm still doing the do. I have to wait for the ring of fire to happen. The ring of fire that I feel like I just can't take anymore. And I'm stubborn because I get to the point that I just collapse. I just surrender. The surrender is when the miracle can happen. That ring of fire is that push that my higher power waits for. And as soon as I give that surrender, boom, it's just sensational. It's the best high in the motherfucking world. Yes, the best. That 23 years old party girl, not even think I was an alcoholic. You think I was going to sit in some freaking recovery program telling me not to drink if life was not fucking amazing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm that insane, okay? Like, I am a happy customer and I continue to come back because I am addicted to recovery and all the stuff that comes from it.
It's a great thing to be addicted to.
Damn right, yeah. I remember someone telling me, you're always gonna be an alcoholic, and I'm just like, what? You're gonna die an alcoholic, and I'm like, I was just like
sober alcoholic. Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You touched on so much stuff, so inspiring to me. I heard a lot of my own story in yours, and I just love about how you bring after. Like, in recovery, that's when shit gets real. We can sit here, we can talk about, everything that we've been through and why we qualify. That's just being part of the problem. Let's be part of the solution, right? Like, let's show you that when you get sober, life doesn't get any easier. Everybody in life faces hardships. The great thing is we get to change that and handle it differently, and we allow it to affect us the way we allow it to affect us, and we can change that too. So
I always like telling people, something, living, when I look at, and I love my family, I really do, but I don't envy them in a sense, because what they go through in their life experiences, they have stuff going on too. They don't have a program. They don't have the tools that I have learned to be able to get through things with peace and be able to get through things with some joy, get through, like, they just don't have that. And I wish that they didn't have to suffer and go through things like they do sometimes. But we're really lucky. Like, we definitely have blessings in the program.
Like, I didn't even know what boundaries meant, right? And my family, there's a lot of functioning alcoholic and a lot of abuse that's just run generations, right? So when I got into recovery, I was setting healthy boundaries. I was speaking at things differently using I statements. I was never telling somebody what they did. I was saying, this is affecting me this way. My family didn't even know what to do. They're like, who are you? And I was like, I don't even know. I don't know. But I think I like it. You know, and I always say that, like, we are so blessed. And could you imagine a world where everybody worked a program? It would be so much more peaceful, so much kinder, you know? And we really are truly blessed with the program. We really are. Do you have anything else that you wanted to share?
I just think it, you know, if anybody is out there going through the ring of fire or about to enter the ring of fire and you're just feeling really hopeless, doesn't matter how sober you are, especially ones that have been years of sobriety, is don't be afraid to go to your support meetings and just ugly cry.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I get people saying, you know, that's, you know, take your problems to your coach or your sponsor or whatever and bring the solution into the rooms, and I do believe in that. However, I know when I have gone through stuff that I just am bursting, and I have gone to those places and I have just ugly cried and just like broken and just telling people, like, I'm broken right now, I am sad, I am struggling. That's all I have to say. And I can't get over how often, every single time I've done that, I've had somebody with long-term sobriety or somebody with some days in that have come and thanked me and said, I have been so close to drinking, and if it wasn't for you sharing that, I thought I was the only one. I thought I'm supposed to be in some special place, like I should be better now.
Yeah.
And that's false, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Life is life. We're lucky that we have a program. And the last thing I'll say too, and I'm tough when I talk to newcomers. You know, if you go to treatment, awesome, because treatment will teach you the basics and it'll get you, you know, really embedded into a really great recovery program. But if you don't, and you just go to the free, you know, program and meetings and whatnot, I'm really, really like, you need to go to at least 4 meetings. If you're not working, 2 a day. If you are working, 1 a day, at least in the first 90 days. And pretty solid, because that foundation that I was taught, like we were talking earlier, is what I continue to use with every other thing that's come into my life. My smoking issue, my eating issue, my relationship. I use the same program and the same source and consistency to get through those things. And if I do not have that myself planted that hard in consistency, like going to regular meetings, because I now show up in automatic pilot and I'm going through shit. Thank God I'm there, because life storms are coming. And if you're not planted, you're going to be blown the frick over.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. I've sat and seen it and witnessed it. People dying. People are dying. Like dying left, right, and center that have been in recovery, like the relapse mode.
Yeah.
You know, relapse is part of my story. It doesn't have to be part of your story.
Amen.
You know, there's no guarantees. There's always another relapse. But how do you know there's going to be another recovery?
Bam. Hit that one right on the head. Absolutely.
That's it. That's my preach. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you so much.
I just, you know, this life is a really, really amazing life. Like, I can't even, it blows my mind sometimes when I have reflection back that I can't even believe it's been 30 years for me. Like, I don't know, it's just mind-boggling that the things that I've gotten through in my life sober, I've witnessed in the world of recovery, especially nowadays. Oh man, I'm just gonna shut up.
Thank you so much for your time today. Your story, you've touched on so much incredible things that are so important. And you've inspired me through telling your story. And thank you for that.
My name, my date?
Yep.
Okay. My name's Suzanne, and my clean date is December 18th, 1991. And definitely the one thing I am most grateful for is establishing an incredible connection with a higher power that I choose to call God.
Awesome.